Hi everyone, Pam Gregory Astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the second half of February and the full moon that we have coming up in Virgo on the 24th. But firstly, I want to backtrack just a little bit to the new moon in Aquarius, because at that new moon in Aquarius, it was squared by Uranus, ruler of Aquarius. So we had strong Uranian Aquarian energy operating, which is linked to all kinds of extreme weather events, earth events, power cuts, that kind of thing. Eruptive, explosive behavior. It's the energy of revolution, rebellion, etc. And just one of the things that happened was a massive storm in California, huge storm, and I think there were 475 mudslides just around the LA area. There really was record rainfall, and people were evacuated. I think 4 people died, and about 1 million people were without power. So it was very extreme, but it was very related to that energy of Uranus square to the new moon. So we're going to be seeing, as I've said before, a lot more of these extreme events, extreme weather, seismic activity, and very volatile, unstable geomagnetics. But it's all part, however uncomfortable it is, and I know it is if you're in this, part of these evolutionary jumps that we're making this year. So that was one thing that was happening. And just to point out as well, because I don't think I said it clearly enough in my last update, we had the dwarf planet Gong Gong, or Gong Kun, as I believe it's pronounced, conjunct Saturn in Pisces. Well, if any sign is connected to flooding, it's Pisces, ruled by Neptune, Lord of the Sea, and Saturn is to do with challenges or difficulties in that area. And Gong Gong is the Chinese god, water god, related to flooding. So, and Gong Gong was exactly conjunct Saturn at that new moon in Aquarius. So it's it's very specific how that actually manifested. And the other thing I'd like to mention was round about the full moon in Leo, and again, we had very strong Aquarian energy. We saw the farmers' protests really erupting in Europe. We saw pretty much every country in Europe, and these are ongoing, with France, Italy, Spain, Greece, Germany, Romania, Poland, I don't know if I've missed any, Belgium, all basically the farmers taking out their tractors and storming the parliamentary buildings and saying, enough, we are no longer going to comply with these extreme measures to take our farms back, take our land back, and make us cull our cattle. And so that was really so spot on for the symbolism of the full moon in Leo. And if you think about it, what Uranus being in Taurus, what are these revolutions about? Well, Uranus, they're about freedom, they're about human rights in a very broad sense, but in Taurus, they're also about food production. The whole strapline, no farmers, no food. They're about agriculture. If you think of the glyph of Taurus, it's related to cattle. It's the sign of the bull. It's very related to cattle and actual cattle prices, as well as commodities, have been more volatile. So again, that was very, very spot on. So, however, and this is, as I've said many times, this is going to be a very big year of awakening and also revolution, because it's all part of Pluto and Aquarius, this gradual beginning of the shift of the power to the people. Now, that's not linear, it's not easy, it's not comfortable, it's not going to be handed to people on a plate, but that revolutionary is what's being stoked now, both by Uranus in Taurus and by Pluto in Aquarius, the sign that is ruled by Uranus. So And think of this, because at the 3D level, absolutely, it's extremely chaotic. We look at the world, we look at the wars, we look at the revolutions, we look at the challenges at the day-to-day level people are going through, which are immense and in many cases horrific. But an analogy that may be helpful for us to think about is, if you think that you are on a New York street at rush hour, whether you are in a car or on the sidewalks, particularly say on the sidewalks where people are moving in a lot of different directions and it's extremely crowded and busy, there is a sense of overwhelming chaos. Particularly if you're not used to that routine, it just feels absolutely overwhelming. The energy, the contradictory directions in which people are going. However, if you were flying in a drone above that busy city street and you slightly speeded up the film, it would become a kind of rhythmic pulsation of rush hour, from quiet to busy that becomes very predictable. Because it's a bird's eye view, it's a higher perspective. And in a way, maybe that's a helpful analogy for us in terms of astrology, that if you're in it, if you're in the 3D-ness of it, it's going to feel and look very chaotic. If you can move to your eagle's perch, your astrological perspective, where there is disorder at one level, there is order at another level. I think I'm quoting Carl Jung there, but nevertheless, astrology, and even with no astrological knowledge, stick to your objective eagle's perch perspective. It gives us a different view of what is actually happening at the 3D level. And as the wonderful Paul Levy, the Buddhist author, talks about, and he's very enmeshed in quantum physics too, he said, where we put our focus and attention is actually a superhero power, So are we going to focus on the chaos and the turbulence, or are we going to, and any single one of us can do this. It's something that's taught in yoga a lot or in meditation. Just shift to your eagle's perch to say, no, I'm going to take a step back to neutrality and observe, take a breath, not be so immersed in it. And I'm just going to observe how things play out in the world. Because with many things that are playing out in the world, particularly with the increased use of AI, just going to really gallop this year with Pluto in Aquarius, we're not going to know what's true or what's not. And we may be completely caught up in something we think is true. And it's not at all. It's been created by AI or encouraged in some way that we should believe. So just really start to take, the first step in taking back your inner authority, taking back your sovereignty, is that detached perspective, that mindfulness, that eagle's perch neutrality. So I hope that analogy of the busy New York street helps a little bit to help our focus on what are we looking at. Now, it's interesting, I still want to just last word on the new moon in Aquarius that we have today, actually, as I'm filming on the 9th, is that friend and colleague Kathy Rose, US astrologer Kathy Rose, has pointed out that if we cast the chart for this new moon in Aquarius for Washington, D.C., which is, of course, where the government sits, Uranus, planet of rebellion, revolution, shock, surprise, is exactly by degree on the midheaven of that chart. And not only is the location Washington, D.C., where the government sits, but the midheaven in that chart is linked to the government and the leadership. So is this suggesting some shock or surprise or some truth that comes to light at this new moon that is very importantly going to ignite the bigger cycles, not only of the Pluto return, the US Pluto return, which I've talked about for the last couple of years, and I'll put that video below, but also this much bigger 20-year transit of Pluto in Aquarius. what is going to emerge, what is going to be set alight, if you like, particularly maybe linked to the US at this new moon in Aquarius, which is the very first one we've had in our lifetime, with Pluto there. We haven't had Pluto in Aquarius for 240 years or so. What is going to be ignited that's part of the much bigger cycle? I hope I'm making sense here, because Pluto is going to stay in Aquarius, as we know, for another 20 years. So just before we get to talk about this full moon in Virgo, we've got some strong days round about the 13th, 14th, even a day or so to either side of that, because we have Mars coming into conjunction with Pluto. Now, whenever we have Mars coming together with Pluto, Mars is the god of war, Pluto is the high octave, they're both linked to power. This can be quite brutal. This can be a kind of might makes right brutality. And so we could see, further war drums playing out here, but also because that conjunction is happening at 0 of Aquarius, this is also going to energize what I'm calling the freedom movement across the world. Particularly, we can see this in Europe very strongly now. It's the freedom movement. As I've talked at length, this is such an echo of 1789, when Pluto was last in Aquarius. It's just such a parallel. It's remarkable. So that's going to be very strong. Exact on the 13th and 14th. And by the way, we also have the moon square to Mars-Pluto conjunction then. So a light is going to be shone on those issues of power and control at that time, but it's also going to energize the freedom movement. And we'll feel it kind of 12th to the 15th. On the 15th as well, the moon comes to conjunct Uranus. Now, this is a fairly regularly repeating cycle, but this is going to add more energy to that rebellious, revolutionary energy of the people. The moon in mundane astrology, global astrology, is linked to the people. On the 17th, we have Mercury square to Uranus. And this is great, actually, particularly because Mercury is in Aquarius, the sign ruled by Uranus. This is brilliant ideas. This is out of the box, genius ideas, new ideas that can be very much linked to any project you're working on. See which house Mercury is falling in your chart. That's at 19 of Aquarius, exactly squaring Uranus at 19 of Taurus. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can download a free birth chart from my website. Go to the link below. You can get a 2-part video series. You can watch ad infinitum that will help you understand where these planets fall in your chart with every update I do and what it means for you. It's not a personalized birth chart reading. These are teaching videos to start you on your astrological journey of really pinpointing where these aspects are triggering your chart and what it means for you. Then also by the 17th, the same day that Mercury is squaring Uranus, we have Venus coming to conjunct Pluto, again at 0 of Aquarius. Now, this can again bring up issues around power and control, more in relationships. So if 0 Aquarius is falling in the 5th house or the 7th house of your chart, this could strongly bring up issues around freedom versus control and safety in your romantic relationships. Which way are you going to go? Are you going to stick with control, but security, or are you going to make a break for freedom in your relationship? So freedom, huge issue all through this year. As we know, it's one of the very big themes in 2024. On the 19th, we have Chiron, known as the wounded healer, exactly conjunct the North Node at 1645 of Aries. Now, this is actually going to give us a glimpse of what could be a bigger issue at the total solar eclipse on the 8th of April, because Chiron is very tightly conjunct the North Node at that total solar eclipse, which is the biggest eclipse of the year. So on the 19th, around the 19th, this could bring up issues around any sickness or illness we have. or any, as I've mentioned, any sense of victim consciousness. We've very, very much been encouraged to live in victim consciousness. And this is a big theme, particularly when Chiron is in Aries. And so, but it's been very pervasive in society. So this gives us an opportunity to see that more clearly at this full moon in the bright light of the full moon in Virgo, which I'm going to go on to in a moment, but also to begin to heal that sense of victim consciousness. And the South Node in Libra is about people pleasing, giving away our power, never wanting to rock the boat, always going along with the crowd. Because another aspect of Chiron's archetype is being the maverick, being the outsider, being the one who doesn't fit. That's very close to the Uranus archetype too. So many of us in the last few years, particularly, have had a sense of being the outsider, the maverick, a sense of differentness. We've been excluded to the periphery of society. That's going to start to turn around. We are going to be, particularly with this strong Aquarius energy, ruled by Uranus, as I say, we're going to start to be proud of our difference, proud of being the maverick, proud of being the outsider, and sticking to our own individual truth, being a pioneer, standing strong in our sovereignty. It's all linked to not only Uranus and Aquarius energy, but also to this conjunction of Chiron to the North Node, which, as I say, becomes very strong at the total solar eclipse. I've mentioned before that I believe as we move through 2024, the outsiders will become the leaders. And by this, I mean visionaries, progressives, ideas, people who do not want leadership in any traditional sense. They don't want to take a title to tell people what to do, to impose rules and regulations in any old-fashioned sense. But because of the ideas that they're birthing or the discoveries that they're coming across, their insight, their research, they are actually beginning to lead a new society, even though they don't want to be established as I am a leader. People will just naturally group around them and say, wow, I want to support that. I want to help that. You know, whether that's that wonderful young chap, Boyan Slat, who runs Ocean Cleanup, which is a voluntary non-profit making organization to clean up, I believe, about 99%, I believe, of the ocean, the world's floating plastic pollution. He's got a way of doing that, or whether it's Nassim Harameyn's brilliant new discoveries in physics and his equations around the creation of reality, or whether it's someone like Robert Edward Grant and his incredible discoveries very, very recently in the last few weeks around the Egyptian pyramids, whether it's someone like that. You know, these are people who are genius level. They are brilliant, but they are creating through their discoveries a new society, a basis for a new society, which is so much more harmonious with the earth than what we've had before. So it's very exciting discovering ancient knowledge. I think that's very linked to Saturn in Pisces too. So that's going to be exciting. So let us now move to look at the chart for the full moon in Virgo, because lots to share with you here too. So I hope you can see this. As always, I set this for England, where I live, 12:30 lunchtime, UK time. And when we have a full moon, we always have the sun and moon opposite each other. So sun at 5 degrees of Pisces, opposite moon at 5 degrees of Virgo. And this is happening at 4:30 Pacific time AM. And as I say, around about lunchtime, 12:30 UK time. So what is this shining a light on? Well, first thing to say is the Virgo Pisces axis is very related to health. That's one of the very big themes of this. With Virgo, it's related to gut health, to nutrition, to the microbiome, to getting everything running like clockwork in the body. Pisces is linked to our immune system, our blood, our health in that sense. So always when you get Virgo Pisces, that's one of the potential big themes that can come up. How healthy are we? Are there things that we need to fix in our health? Or are there revelations that have come to light that may involve perhaps Saturn here, more rules and regulations around health again in some way? You know, Saturn is the planet of contraction, constriction, rules and regulations. So that's going to be interesting to see how that operates as well. So we may become very aware of our health deficiencies and what we have to do to correct those. And just with relation to that, a couple of things come to mind, because Virgo is an earth sign. A couple of things that come to mind, and this is really relating to Uranus in Taurus, innovation related to food growing and the soil and farming and food production, but also the moon here is trine to Jupiter, again related to planning for our future, new ideas. And a couple of things that come to mind to share with you. I've mentioned before something called electroculture. And this is an incredibly simple process that I believe has been used for a couple of 100 years. And essentially, it's just using copper rods to put around your vegetable growing area that increase the electromagnetic field. Think of Uranus in Taurus, electromagnetism, Taurus, the earth, growing food. I mean, it's so literal. And what it does, those copper rods increase the electromagnetic field around the growing area to produce much higher yield in your crops. Something else that came into my inbox this week, and I hadn't heard of it before. I'm not in any way linked to this organization, but it was so spot on for this full moon in Virgo. I'll put a link below for it. It's called EM. And this has been developed by, as I understand it, a Japanese professor who has developed over 80 natural beneficial microorganisms that activate the local native microorganisms. And even if the land has been laid waste through chemicals and pesticides for many, many years, it can start to improve the natural soil biodiversity with all these microorganisms very quickly, even if that land is impoverished, and attract worms into that soil. And what that does is actually, as the rainwater from the land runs into the waterways, it naturally starts to regenerate the water self-purification systems, get rid of all the toxicity in the rivers and the oceans, get rid of the sludge, etc., the bad bacteria, because the land becomes better aerated, better, just much more healthy overall with the worms and the naturally occurring microorganisms. And this is so interesting because, and this is spot on in the area where Dr. Zach Bush operates, because he's always said that without healthy soil, we cannot have a healthy microbiome. Well, Virgo is related to tiny things, tiny bacteria, little things. It's an earth sign. It's also related, as I say, to the microbiome and getting everything running like clockwork. We can't get everything running like clockwork in our guts until we have it running like clockwork in the soil. And so this process apparently has been used in 180 countries in total, and the person who wrote to me about this has personally been involved in this in Holland and Portugal for the last 4 years. And over those few short years, even though the land was pretty desolate through 30 or 40 years of chemical spraying, it's now producing incredible yield of fruit and vegetables, very naturally because of this natural organic bacteria that has been put back into the soil. I hope I'm making sense here. But anyway, the website explains it all. And the reason I'm sharing it with you is, again, I've got no connection to this, but it's just so spot on for this full moon in Virgo. And this won't be the only initiative that's happening out there. There are initiatives like this happening all over the world to turn our earth, our nature, our land back into thriving. This is very much the symbolism of Homer, as you know, with her magic stick, the Macaulay. She was able to turn impoverished land back to fertile land and grow food again, magically produce food from the land and the sea. So it's very related to Homer's archetype here. So just wanted to share that with you, and it may be of some practical use to you as well. The other thing is, and of course, we have the moon trine to Jupiter, as I say, which is a very positive aspect of bringing new ideas. We also have the Sun and Mercury conjunct Fomalhaut, the fixed royal star of Persia, at 3 degrees of Pisces. And Fomalhaut this is the spiritual teacher. It's a fixed royal star, so it only moves 1 degree every 72 years. This will help to give us a higher spiritual perspective on what is unfolding at this time. So please remember that, mindfulness, take a breath, go to your eagle's perch. But there may well be more flooding around this time because it's Pisces. The sun is conjunct to exact to the degree Gong Kun again, the Chinese god of waters and flooding. It may well be that, it's possible something viral could happen at this time because that's very linked to Virgo Pisces, but let us hope that's not the case. The more we can stay in great health with our microbiome, the more protected we're going to be naturally. We'll have stronger immune systems as well. Also, keep a running mantra of I am already in perfect radiant health. I am already in perfect radiant health. And when you are preparing food or in the shower or out for a walk, you can keep on rolling that mantra around your head and step into the feeling of that. I do that a lot. So look to where the early degrees of Pisces fall in your own birth chart, because Saturn entered Pisces about a year ago in early March 2023. It only moved up to 7 degrees of Pisces last year. It was very, very slow in those, drilling down in those first degrees. So see which house Pisces falls in your chart, because there may have been some additional work or responsibility, or you had to take things thoroughly and comprehensively but cautiously. There was some kind of bureaucratic struggle you had to work through, something like that, because Saturn tends to slow us up but give much greater focus to make sure we do it thoroughly and properly. This year, Saturn will move up to 19 degrees of Pisces. So it's moving much, much faster now, from 7 degrees to 19 degrees of Pisces. So it may well be affecting another house, entering another house in your birth chart. So just observe, what is that about for you? Because this can give us incredibly focus, an incredible focus. I remember when Saturn's been moving through my third house of thinking, that is often, and it stays in a house for about 2 years, it's often when I was doing my most serious study. I was focusing my mind. And actually, on the 28th of this month, February, Mercury comes to conjunct Saturn exactly. And that is a great time to really focus your mind down on something. But just in general, Saturn in a house you will need to give additional attention or work or responsibility around that particular house area. Also look to where Virgo falls in your chart, because again, the full moon will tend to reveal some completion or closure or culmination, or perhaps something that you weren't aware of in your life before in that particular area of your chart. Interesting, just a little later, on the 27th of the month, we have Mars that comes to square. Mars here comes to square Jupiter exactly. And that's kind of fighting for belief systems, fighting for freedom. Mars is very much the god of war, fighting. Aquarius, freedom, human rights. Jupiter's belief systems. So fighting for belief systems. Again, this may be related to the farmers, to revolution, to agriculture. And the next day, the 28th, we have Eris in a semi-square to the Sun and Mercury, and the Moon opposing Eris. So we've got a couple of kind of feisty days here. The other thing I'd just like to say about Saturn in Pisces, where it will stay, it won't fully exit Pisces until February 2026. It stays in a sign around 2.5 years. This could be connected to some kind of sea transport or sea trading, because Mercury, particularly when it comes to conjunct Saturn at the end of the month, 27th, 28th, Mercury is the planet linked to trade and transport very much. And this is trade and transport by sea, Pisces. And so there may be some blockages or something getting in the way of normal travel, transport, trading routes, particularly around this full moon and a few days after, towards the end of the month. So that's going to be interesting to see. But what I would also say is, and I can stop sharing here, that as we move out of February into March, and remember, all planets are direct at this time. There's such a feeling of speed. I don't know about you, but days just seem to last about just a few hours. They are going so fast. Many of us are very tired because of all the solar flares. We just had another big X-class flare, 3.3 X-class flare today. We've had a whole spate of M-class flares this week. They are coming thick and fast, and that can take us in our physicality quite a lot of assimilation. Welcome them in as ingredients for our evolution, but people are getting very tired. I know I am, so my days are shorter. It's either extreme insomnia or extreme fatigue, and it swings both ways, which I know it does for many of you. Know that those are the ingredients for our evolution, some of the key ingredients. So just try to, rather than resist, try and, however uncomfortable they are, try and welcome them in. But things are speedy. From next month onwards, from March, that potential upcoming conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus, which is one of the most important aspects of the year, is really starting to take form, We have the Aries equinox as well in March. April is absolutely a power-packed month with the total solar eclipse in Aries on the 8th and the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction on the 20th. That is going to be an immense month, I think, of change, excitement, revelation, jumps in our consciousness, perhaps more galactic connection. That's going to be more cosmic discovery about the laws of the universe. It's going to be incredible. But just really go back to what I was saying earlier, because where we put our focus is so incredibly important. We can either focus on the chaos, the turbulence, the awfulness, the war, the horror, the gloom and doom, which is absolutely horrific, but you get more of what you think about all day long. And if we're focused on that, we are just going to be back in the feelings of horror and outrage and anger. And that's going to produce tomorrow, which is invisible right now. Tomorrow is invisible. We are formulating it in our energy field. Each of us individually and collectively, we are formulating, we are creating our tomorrows today. So if you're in those very negative energies, that is the kind of experience you'll have tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. Whereas if we can stay on a high level of consciousness, it's the only way I can see to get out of this hamster wheel of awfulness. If we can focus on what we're creating, the excitement, the innovations, the reconnection with nature, this sense of oneness, the love of all sentient beings, and really blending in with nature and starting to feel the animals, the trees, the plants. And I know this feels abstract because these aren't tangible things, but that energy is creating a way different future for us than the alternative. Remember, where you put your focus and attention is a superhero power. So if nothing else, keep that rolling mantra. If you can't think of anything better, I'm welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love. We are welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love. And you can use that on our very simple 15-minute Sunday night meditations where we come together. I'll put the link for that very simple explanatory video below if you don't know about it. It's all for free. Please join energetically if you wish. And that really is increasing in power and love and this sense of incredible interconnectedness and togetherness that we are creating as a family of frequency every week as we go forwards. So I hope that's helped you a lot there, and a lot more to come in March and April. The energies are really, really picking up a pace. So thank you so much for listening. God bless for now, and enjoy the full moon that we have in Virgo on the 24th of February. Bye for now. We'll be back very soon.